Hey there. Looks like the streaming is connected onto Twitch. We're just waiting for the YouTube channel to kick in. So let's give that just a minute. All right. It looks like all the channels are kicked in. All right. Hi. Welcome to Evylyn Rose's Clearing Conversations. Obviously, I'm Evylyn Rose. This is a Witchy Tarot AMA session. Um, at the start of these sessions, I tend to give a little bit of an intro, give a little time for people to come in. Um, let's see. Uh, so let's give it just a minute. So on these, you will notice, first of all, I'm highly, highly awkward on camera. I try. This surprisingly is me significantly less awkward on camera than I was even just a few months ago. So progress is being made. And if you don't believe me, go look at some of the early recorded YouTube videos that I made for, there's a mix of uh, scripted and unscripted, and the scripted are significantly worse. So I have learned to go unscripted as much as possible, which makes these Q&A and AMA sessions that I do significantly easier. There is the stress of the fact that it is a live stream, but we're just gonna shove that anxiety down, deal with it later if it comes back to bite me. Um, if you were in the stream last Saturday, or if you watched the replay of last Saturday's AMA session, I totally goofed, and it was highly embarrassing for me, but it was also funny, and we were able to roll with it successfully. And it actually ended up being a great case in point to some of the questions that had come up that I was addressing last Saturday. And so it happens. Yes, I believe that was Saturday. One thing you will learn about me if you haven't caught on already is I'm a bit squirrel brained. That's what I call it. It's a little bit of ADHD. It comes out sometimes. And so it may have been Saturday. It may have been one of the Monday sessions. Time does get a little subjective at times, and if you're a super sciencey nerd like myself, time is 100% relative. It is most days subjective in every way. Measurable while also subjective. It's fun. Um, but then we get a little too nerdy into it. But let me back up a little bit. Okay. On occasion, my cat will pop up here. Thankfully, it is not sunny on the Saturday session. She likes to hop up into the evening sun, and then blinds me with said sunlight by moving the blinds to reveal the sun straight to my eyes. So thankfully, there's no sun today. Unfortunately, she is also going to probably be here trying to get all the loves because the dog can't get up here. Um, so again, quick intro. So welcome again to Clearing Conversations. This is an AMA session dealing with topics, all things tarot, modern witchcraft, anything adjacent to that, um, more broadly, spirituality. Um, I've been at this and studying this for a very, very long time. So there's plenty of things I'll speak to. If any questions come up that I don't have an answer for, or it's more complex that can be answered through a live stream, that's when I start recommending resources and additional things, either leaving them in show notes for replays, um, or encouraging you guys to reach out. I always have all my contact linked to my website, socials, all that good stuff in the show notes. Uh, Questions can literally be about any of those topics. Again, tarot, witchcraft, spirituality, or even just practical practices, like how to weave in spiritual practices or addressing your spiritual health today, especially if you are one of the many who have kind of gone into that spiritual non-religious category, our growing category, especially here in the US, um, and trying to figure out what that looks like outside of specific theological or um, what's my other word I was looking for? Oh no, or dogmatic. There we go. Theological or dogmatic structures. If you're trying to figure out what can spiritual practice still look like, there are ways to address your spiritual health without um, finding yourself as a member of a very particular religious worldview. Um, And then there's a way to do it when you are a part of a religious worldview. So I'm happy to help you with any of that. That's part of what I do as an empowerment guide. It's where my continuing education goes. I'm one of those never stop learning types. And that's kind of what these Q&A name AMA sessions are all about. Is my brain is filled with a ton of nerdy, super nerdy things, from science to esoterics and metaphysics. Like, I've got healthcare, psychology. My degree in psychology is in science, which is really fun because it's a bachelor's level degree. Nothing is more fun than saying you have a BS in psychology. Um, if you're interested in psychology, make sure to get your bachelor's in science, just for the bragging rights to say you have a BS in psychology. Um, is hilarious, every meaning of the word or of the phrasing. um, but anyway, that's what I do as an empowerment guide, is bridging and weaving together all these aspects of reality together for a true holistic health that isn't denying the spiritual aspects, like actually acknowledging that things like the placebo effect are an actual phenomenon worth exploring further. We just don't tend to favor the funding to do so. Um, and then on the other hand, not going so, I want to say woo woo, but woo woo can also be kind of fun. Um, Not necessarily going so wishy-washy, like, "Ooh, I wish that were, it sounds good, it sounds true, let's make it true." Like, that's not exactly how that works. So bringing a little bit of grounded reality to this, also acknowledging everything is made of energy, and spirituality being what it is as far back as we know. And it's not even just humans or Homo sapiens, it goes back as far as, um, uh, we're seeing evidence of uh, burial practices suggesting religious thinking with the Homo naledi hundreds of thousands of years before seeing evidence of it within what we call modern humans, which are the Homo sapiens. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of years worth of spiritual practices. They didn't come about just because we looked up at the sky and said, "Oh, I bet that means something." It was a little bit more to it. It's just so far back, and the archaeological record can only show us so much. So we're kind of stuck with inferring based on what evidence we have. That doesn't mean that it's not real. So I'm also, again, in that balancing between the grounded in science and that more spiritual, metaphysical, beyond what we can study with science. Making sure we're not applying cynicism along the way, because there's skepticism. We want to be skeptical of things. We should question things because that's what keeps us from that too wishy-washy. But we also want to make sure that we are considering our sorry, brain. I should probably preface this session by saying my sinuses, if you can't hear it in my voice, my sinuses are kind of uh, messing with me. I've just spent the past 24 hours outdoors, between Fairhill Nature Center and Maryland's Frog Frenzy event they do every year, where, when all the tadpoles are out and about, inviting all the kids out to do fun activities and things. We did that last night, and then today we spent several hours at the University of Delaware in Newark, the Newark location. They have their Ag Day every year, major event. And so we were out doing that. Even though we told ourselves we'd only be there for an hour, we were there for like 3 hours. So the sinuses are definitely kicking in. So if I get a little off topic and confused, if I start to say something and then kind of like completely drop the ball on it, and you're watching the replay, you can always send me an email and be like, "Hey, you never finished that point. I'm curious what you're about to say." So I do apologize if today's session's a little scatterbrained and kind of halfway there. As long as I don't go into a coughing fit or anything like that, we'll keep going for the hour. Um, let's see. Oh, hold on one moment. Gabe, you need to turn that TV off. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so one of the hard things about live streaming when you have a a child at home. Sometimes you have to look away from the camera even when you're live on air. All right. So, let's see. What have I not already hit on? Do we need to get into the questions? Do, 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 do. Okay. So I'm just gonna wrap up our intro real quick. I know I kind of went on a bit of a tangent, but just so that you know what what's going on here if you haven't been before. If you're new here, these AMA Q&A sessions are meant to be a more kind of more relaxed, more conversational. It's about oops, sorry, my dog is wagging her tail and it's hitting my desk. Um, so there are no if you're here looking for tarot readings or live readings, I don't do that during these Q&A and AMA sessions. They are meant to be educational, informative only. So I'm basically just addressing questions. During our Monday streams, they tend to be quicker Q&A sessions, whereas today with our Saturday streams, I call them my clearing conversations, tend to go a little bit more, spend more time going over the questions, and making sure that they are um, a little bit more addressed than they would in a quicker 30-minute session versus a 60-minute session, if that makes more sense. As you can tell, I usually start the stream off with a quick update before we jump to questions. I do that mainly just to make sure that people coming into the streams, in those first few minutes have time to get in, settle in, start thinking about what kinds of questions they want me to address today. As far as how to get your questions um, covered during these Q&A and AMA sessions, you can, of course, always join me live during the live streams. Drop your questions in the chat. I always prioritize what is in the chat just because you are right here. So naturally, if you're going to be joining me live, I want to prioritize that for you because you're already here. It's just like if somebody sent you, asked you questions, and then somebody who's standing right in front of you asks you questions, the person who texts you asking a question, you're probably going to respond to after you finish answering the question for the person who's right in front of you, right? Same thing with my live streams. I'm going to prioritize what comes up in the chat. That said, I do also usually come prepared with my list of questions. These are from those of you who have sent me questions ahead of time, maybe because you already knew you weren't going to be able to um, attend the live stream for whatever reason, or you're one of my lurkers who likes to pop in, but you don't say anything and you just want to observe and everything, but you still have some questions and you like to keep them anonymized. I can be the same way during a lot of live stream events. I've only in more recent years been able to move past that lurking stage into a more active stage. Um, but I definitely get that because I can be that way too sometimes. So to send questions to me ahead of time to get them added to my list, you can always reach out to me via my email, a form. I believe I have forms set up on my website. Different community spaces, whether that's a secret sanctuary or my old, nowadays pretty quiet messages in the moonlight has a Discord server, so you can always pop questions there. Um, you can also reach out to me on any of the social media platforms that you see me on. I'm mostly on Blue Sky, but any socials you find me on, feel free to reach out if you have a specific question that you want me to address during these. Um, all right. That said, let's go ahead and dive in for today. Um, where are we starting on our questions for today? Oh, I like this one. We'll start with this one for today because that is very fitting. So I mentioned just a few minutes ago that I'm dealing with my sinuses acting up, and that always really messes everything up for me, right? Any of you guys who deal with like hay fever or seasonal allergies, anything like that, there's the way you feel most of the year, and then there's the way you feel during this period of where the weather starts to shift and the pollen. I think for me it might be tree pollen, I think, is out to get me. Those days when that's high, that tends to be the days that get me. Anyway, point that I'm getting around to is the question I was asked was, how do I protect my energy when I'm feeling drained? Um, and of course, that question immediately caught my eye because I'm like, oh, I feel drained today. Thank you for asking. Um, so drained can be referred to anything. So it can be like physically, like, ugh, I just don't feel good for whatever reason. Maybe you're sick, maybe you have a cold, flu, whatever. Drained could just be you've been working all day, every day, nonstop, can't catch a break. Or you're a parent and you're dealing with a child all day, every day, maybe more than one. Um, whatever the thing is that is draining you. You could just be going through multiple things. Maybe you just donated blood, and your blood level is a little lower than usual. Anything at all that makes you feel less than if I asked you to do something physical, like, and you're just like, I can't believe you asked me. So either something where it's like, okay, if I start asking you to run a lap or um, something that like gets the cardiovascular system going, right? Like running or jogging or something, or any exercises. Swimming laps counts too, or on the more mental side, doing highly cognitive work for hours on end. Um, so kind of hitting the books, if you will. And that can look many different ways. Many of us who have jobs that involve sitting in front of a computer for hours on end, like the first time I worked a job where like did not move from my seat and like the core of my job involved me silently sitting in front of a computer, I thought for sure, like, man, that totally matches me and my energy levels. I got this. That is intense work when it involves putting all your cognitive faculties to work, digging into records and doing all the things. Oh my goodness, it's a lot. That can make you feel drained. Um, I'm trying to think other things that can feel drained if you're dealing with emotional things. If there's relationships in your life where things are really struggling, maybe there's lots of arguments or tension. It could be the loss of a loved one, maybe going through some grieving processes, all these things. And if you have more than one going at a time, like that's all of those things count as being drained. So when I answer this question for how do I protect my energy when I'm feeling drained, um, I'm talking about anywhere on that kind of lived experience of what it might be to feel drained. It can be physical, mental, emotional, um, and just all general like energies. Ugh, I don't have any more in me today. Can I go to bed now? Like just I'm done for the day. Let me check out. Um, as far as how to protect it, I'm gonna be honest. If the goal is to get is to instantly reach for the crystals and the sprays and the incense blends and special spells or chants or any of that stuff, like by all means use those things that bring you comfort, that fill your cup, right? um but when we're talking about protecting our energy, none of those things are really going to protect your energy as effectively as just setting boundaries. Be like, not today. No, no more. I cannot handle this today. Or, you know what? I would love to talk to you about this thing that you're coming at or coming to me with. And we do need to talk about it, but not today. Or even go take it a step further and say, like, let's put this on the calendar. Um, I want to have this conversation with you. This is important for me. Let's put this on the calendar and set it to further out to give yourself that comfort time. How much time do you need between now and when you can have that conversation? Um, Putting things on a calendar amazingly works for a lot of things involving our energy management. Um, if it's just kind of needing that space of that support, it might be something where, even though we're saying we're protecting our energy because we're drained, sometimes it's having those people in our lives that we can go to. Um, many, whether it's of a specific religious denomination or a bit more non-denominational, many churches usually have. What do they call that? So of course you have the pastors are usually trained in like pastoral counseling and things like that. But if you're like, I don't necessarily want that level of, religious affiliation, I just need somebody that I can talk to. but I don't necessarily want to go to a therapist. I don't necessarily want to go to like a priest. Like there's usually lay people within our communities. Again, doesn't necessarily have to be a specific church. It could be a non-denominational. Some organizations are identified as religious institutions, but they tend to not necessarily feel that way, but they still offer these services. Um, and that's usually what I recommend is being like, who are your like emotional support people? And like having that space to have the compassionate ear, let it out. And what part of the reason I recommend that is because sometimes what you do need is to talk. Sometimes you just need another person to really understand where you're at. And while some things do require higher echelons of care, so maybe you do need to actually go talk to the therapist. Maybe you do need to go talk to a psychiatrist. Um, but for the more general stuff, in this case of like, I'm feeling drained and I really need to protect my energy, sometimes it's going and talking to just that um, lay clerical staff who can sit down with you and just say, hey, like, you are handling a lot. You know what? Why don't we just sit here for a minute? Sometimes I'm so busy brained and I'm also very action oriented, and I will like, no matter how drained I am, I will keep trying to like problem solve. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna figure this out. And sometimes what I need is that person who just says, "Stop, sit down. Here, let us light a candle." See, again, you don't have to not do those things, but you want to make sure that they aren't replacing that actual act of protecting your energy, taking that space. Um, I know one of the common self-care tips among young and newer mothers is like the go like you're gonna have somebody watch the kid for like 30 minutes, and for those 30 minutes you are going to go and lock yourself in the bathroom. You're gonna take a bath. Doesn't matter if you're not the type of person to soak in oils or Epsom salts or whatever. You're going to take those 30 minutes, even if all you do is just sit in that room, even if you never run the tub. Um, and so sometimes that is a way of protecting your energy. It's setting that boundary, giving yourself that space to be alone and to breathe and refill your cup. Um, yes, you can incorporate crystals. Yes, you can incorporate various types of musics, chants, affirmations. You can absolutely have candles. I always have. I, if I could reliably move my camera around to show you this, I would, but it's not. I do not have my workspace set up for that. But I always have at least one candle. I have multiple different crystals, stones, um, charms, little things that make me happy. There's always at least one tarot deck. I have so much stuff over here. This is terrible. I even have a thing of magnesium oil because I just never know. Um, little gnome on a thing. It's legit like this tiny little 3D printed gnome, and he's sitting on one of those little like Mancala type style beads that are not really beads. It's more like a marble, like a half marble type thing. And literally somebody just kind of glued on this little 3D printed guy. And so he just kind of sits there and he's almost like if you're old like me, you might remember the toys called Weeble Wobbles. He's like a little Weeble Wobble, only he will fall over if you push him too hard. Um, so not a perfect Weeble Wobble, but a little bit. So I have all these little things, a picture of my son from when he was younger, um, and all those little things. Like, do they of and by themselves protect my energy? No. When I am trying to protect my energy, can I still use them? Can I sit here and light that candle, smell the aromatherapy, and yes, you can use those things. They by themselves don't protect your energy, but they can support you during those times. The real protection is being able to set those boundaries. And again, scheduling. Schedule that bath. Schedule that, mommy needs a minute. Schedule that conversation that you just can't handle right now, or that task that needs to be done, but you don't have that energy left today or this week. Just schedule it out, because then you're not going to sit there feeling bad and draining and the negative self-talk because you're not doing the thing because you literally don't have the energy to do things. So to that question of how do I protect my energy when I'm feeling drained, set those boundaries, say no, schedule things that out a little further for that you cannot handle today or this week. Um, and then just commit to doing them when you get to that day. And if you end up having to reschedule it, you have to reschedule it. It's okay. Um, because that act of scheduling those things out a little further, it gives your mind that permission to be like, hey, I am handling it. I am tackling it. So you're just the act of scheduling it is the problem solving. So you you schedule your problem solving essentially. And that just allows you to free up what energy you do have while you do those other things that help to replenish and refill your cup. Um, so the best way to protect your energy is boundaries and scheduled stuff. That's it. All right. Okay. Let's take a look. Oh, and if you have just come into the chat while I was answering that question, I do prioritize questions in the chat as I'm answering. If you pop your question into the chat room, I can go ahead and answer those as soon as I finish up with the next question. Um, we are going through any questions dealing with tarot, witchcraft, spirituality, practical practices, and things of that nature. Um, let's see. And let's take um, want to try to make sure I don't answer a question that's too close to one that I've answered like in recent days. I try to spread them out. I did get quite a couple of questions that were similar. They're not the same, but they are similar enough that I kind of want to spread them out a little bit. Oh, this is a nice simple question. I can answer this one fairly quickly, I think. Okay, so one of the questions I got was, what do I do if a card's meaning doesn't match what the book says? Those of you who've either taken my Tarot 101 or ever just chit chatted with me or read anything where I'm talking about getting started with tarot, a lot of times my first recommendation is like use the little white book. So there's always some sort of booklet that comes with tarot decks. If you ever get a tarot deck and it does not come with a booklet of any sort whatsoever, and there's just a QR code, check to see if there's publisher information on that box. Because if not, that's a counterfeit. That's not. Don't do that. Artists, there's a reason why things cost as much as they do, and they only get more expensive when we purchase counterfeits instead of the real thing. So if you have the real thing, most of the time there will be some sort of booklet in there. And now I say booklet because they usually are these tiny little I'll show it off again, even though I know I've shown it before. They usually have like some sort of like little insert like this. This one's a thicker one because it comes in a couple different languages. Um, and then they can be that little, or they can even be a full size book. Some of the newer decks that are a little fancier, the card deck themselves might be smaller, but they'll come with this much bigger book. Um, so anyway, point is, I usually say that these the card meanings, like you want to look at those, take a look at what the booklets say. They'll usually offer some like buzz keywords and kind of use those to kind of help guide you as you are starting to learn the meanings of these cards. So normally when we run into the situation of there's the card's meaning and then there's, you know, what I'm looking at and I'm like, I don't think this matches. Like I definitely, this card came up and I immediately focused on, this one feature. I gotta pull a card just so I can give myself an example. I stared at this card and for some reason, like the crocodile's head, like really stood out for me. And I know the crocodile head is not a symbol that's in every tarot deck, but like I pulled this one card and I swear up and down, like there's just something about this. And it just made me think about a mother crocodile and her eggs. I'm like, okay, then if I pull it up and I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the emperor, like I'm not necessarily going to think about a crocodile and her eggs. So the book's probably not going to mention that anywhere, right? Okay, so I know that was an awkward example. I just had to give something something there concrete for myself. Um, so you might have something where like you're like, I want to talk to them about like that highly protective mother energy, but the book is saying this is like authoritarian, like power hungry, like leader type energy. And it's like that can happen in readings. And that kind of goes back to when you do start learning how to read cards, especially if you're reading for yourself or for others, you're usually doing this in the course of spreads. So you're not necessarily looking at a single card, but you're looking at multiple cards, and each place within that spread provides context. Um, so if I'm reading that card, yeah, sure, Emperor, might sometimes mean that more authoritative, more like, the think like the overbearing, like dominating, like father energy, right? Stereotypical, just like don't don't make me tell your father kind of energy, right? Um, and then you're getting this kind of more maternal bent like feeling when you're reading the card. And it's like, but within the context, it might say like, hey, let's shift our energy from that more, overbearing, trying to control all things, to just focusing on that protective side of it. The emperor, just like an empress, is protective. Um, so we're trying to be protective of, in that kind of way. So we're tapping that high level of authority, and we're kind of in that authority figure, but we're also needing to focus more on that protective side of it. That how do I keep my people safe? And so yeah, in that case, that's not what the book is going to say at all. You're tapping into that deeper meaning of the card that goes beyond just what's there. Um, I know I've said it before, and I'll always keep saying it, that tarot began as a tool for spiritual growth. It's meant for reflection, helping us to learn different spiritual truths. It's not meant to be some like set in stone, like this card means this and it means this only every single time. It's like it will never, if you are using tarot in that way, that is not tarot. You, it can be something, you're creating something with it, but it's not tarot, if you're using it in that kind of way. um so again, what to do if the card's meaning doesn't match what the book says? Trust your intuition. If there is something that the book is saying that you're like, that does not match what I'm getting, trust what you're getting. Again, if you're at the stage, you're most likely at the beginning of learning to read. So this goes back to my typical guidance of, do some journaling, jot it down. So I would, after reading like that, where you have a card that, here's what I say this card means, and this is what the book said it meant. Um, Jot that down in your journal. So months or years later, when you go back and you're reviewing it, you can be like, oh, you know what? My intuitive instinct on there was spot on, or here's what the book's meaning could have meant in relation to that. Now that I've kind of had time to process and really think about it, because there's what we think and say in the moment of the reading, and then there's the aha moments that come after. And that's part of what journaling helps us with. It helps us kind of make a record of those in the moments, so that those aha moments later on, we can kind of reconcile and process that. And that's what helps us learn. Um, if you haven't had teachers in your life tell you that, like that's how learning works. But yeah, so again, awesome if you are getting different meanings than what the cards say or than what the book says. That there's nothing wrong with that. It means you're learning. All right, let's see. Okay, I do not have any new questions in the chat yet. Again, if you'd like for me to answer your questions, I do prioritize any questions that are in the chat. So please go ahead and drop those in the chat. I'm going to keep going, see if I can find us another question in the meantime. Ooh, I love this question. I haven't seen this question come up in a while. Do I have to practice magic naked? Or skyclad is what we like to call it, clad only by the sky. Doesn't that sound so pretty? So poetic. Okay, so there's a thing that came up a lot, particularly in Wicca's early days. So Wicca specific practice was this concept of skyclad, being clad only by the sky. It was very poetic, sounded very beautiful for a new upstart religion trying to claim ancient roots. How gorgeous is that? It fit all the ancient stories of witches dancing naked in the woods. Um, it so it worked, right? Um, the reality is it doesn't have to be. There were so many like novices. I remember being a novice myself, like, why? Not to say that like I have any problem, if nudity is the thing, like whatever, but So whether you have a hang up on being naked or not, there's still some very practical moments. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't really want to go trekking through the woods in, 65-degree weather naked. That just sounds cold. And I already have I have some vascular issues in my hands and my feet. I would not do well. I would be turning blue. Um, so no, thank you. Right. So whether you personally have an issue with nudity or not, um, it's not very practical. Clothing was developed for a reason, and that usually involves the fact that we need warmth in cooler weather. We need protection from the sun when it's too hot and sunny. So clothing was developed for a reason. So anyway, so back when this was still really pushed hard, was like, this is the theology of this faith. This is how you practice magic. Novices would ask, like, okay, but why? Why practice skyclad? And there were many ideas that were put out. So they would talk about things like it was a barrier to your energy, um, and all these kinds of things. Meanwhile, the if you're doing things indoors, the building's not a barrier to your energy. The concrete, the iron, steel beams aren't a barrier. Doors aren't a barrier. If you're like in a tent or something, the tarp isn't a barrier, but a little bit of clothing or polyester is. Like, no. Some of us weren't buying it. It did not make sense. And so there was a lot of this idea that all these kind of ideas that were generated. And when it came out later on, like, yeah, that this is a newer religion. Some of the stuff was kind of made up on the spot. We kind of stopped pushing that. So is the part where there was actual like evidence of improvements when it came to magical ability, deeper spiritual religious experiences, um, where we saw that happen the most depended on quite a few things. One, of course, if you're sitting there shivering or, this getting sunburnt, you weren't having an increase. So it definitely was not a matter of doing it if the weather wasn't right for it. But assuming you have nice, warmer environment, you don't have the sun burning down you, you don't have people calling the cops because, oh my goodness, the nudists are running around in the woods. As long as you didn't have any of that, we did see this increase, or we do today. Still, it's not only historical. We do see this increase in um, positive experiences. And a lot of that more has to do with that concept of freedom, being a lot of the theology, especially within more more Wiccan flavored. Again, if you've never if you don't know me and you don't know my background, I refer to myself as a Wiccan flavored witch, because that is kind of where my jumping in point was decades ago, was within that Wicca framework. I've since kind of evolved from there, but you'll catch a lot of my explanations kind of go back to Wicca, kind of like, and then, okay, let's start implementing from there. Um, it's just like when we study space science, right? You got to start from the Earth and the perspective of the Earth, because that's where we physically are to observe the universe, to be able to then explain things from the other vantage points within the universe. But we have to start somewhere. So for me, you might hear me kind of start at Wicca and then kind of branch out. And this is one of those, definitely, absolutely. So anyway, so we saw that improve where there was this idea of being truly free. Like when the charge of the goddess, there's this line about, if you be truly free, then you'll be naked in your rights. And that was kind of the idea of, you are not ashamed of who you are. You are not ashamed of your body. You do not let the ideals or the rules or the criticisms of society dictate what your body should or should not be, whether that's the way it appears or whether or not it's covered, and in what ways it is or isn't covered. Um, and so there's that liberation, there's that empowerment aspect to it. And when we see that empowerment piece, again, if you don't know me, I call myself an empowerment guy for exactly this reason. That has that psychological, it flips that switch. Now that power of belief is triggered, and that strengthens spiritual experiences. That strengthens um, real life outcomes. This kind of goes back to, again, I bring up from time to time the placebo effect. People misunderstand what that means. It's not that this thing is a placebo. It actually could mean that that thing we used as a placebo in the study may not have actually been a placebo. But what it tells us is that belief alone can have an impact on whether or not something will or will not work. Um, and in this case, when it comes to ritual nudity, practicing naked or skyclad, this is a way to trigger that that psychological experience where our belief can strengthen our magic. It can strengthen our resolve. It can um, empower us. Now, again, if you personally have hangups and discomfort around being nude, even when you're in a room by yourself, even when it's not cold or too sunny or any other reason why you might want some clothes on, um, if you personally are not comfortable and you don't feel any need or desire to become comfortable and try to like get past that, um like then it's not going to have that same added benefit to you. So for that specific question of like, do I have to practice naked? No, you do not have to. It is a choice, 100% a choice. um I personally am one who likes the idea of try things. It goes into that don't knock it till you've tried it. Many things in life, I did not knock it until I tried it, and then I tried it and I still don't knock it, but I will say it is not for me. So me personally, yes, I will do skyclad work, but it not if it's cold, not if I'm about to get sunburned. I don't want to have roasted everything. And if you can't tell, like I'm in dim lighting right now, but if I actually my camera does have like a built-in ring light, and the reason I don't turn that thing on even to its lowest setting is because the second I turn that on, it's like washout. I refer to this as damn near translucent. That is how pale the skin is. So me going out into the sunlight without any clothing is not going to bode well for my skin health in any regard. It will be painful. I don't like it. But that said, don't there is that if you've never tried, again, in the comfort of your own time and space, um, there are different practices involving ritual cleansing, so baths. There's ways to do it even with a shower. Um, those are nice, quiet, private moments that you already have that involve the nude. So incorporating those practices in, um, that can kind of give you a sense of like, do I feel comfortable doing this while I'm taking my shower or bath? And if the answer is a no, then maybe ritual nudity is not for you. Let's give it a pass. But if you're like, actually, that wasn't so bad, then maybe you can step it up. Maybe alone in your own private space, you can give it a try. And again, if you're like, I don't like this, then don't do it. Like there's nothing, there's no scientific evidence that you must be skyclad to get those added benefits. The only times we really see these added benefits to working skyclad is when there is that belief that it will empower you to be free, that you are liberated, and you need that psychological flip um, to get you into that mind space or that space or mindset. There we go. Mindset. I know my words. Um, so if you don't need that, then you don't need to go there. But it is an option and it's worth trying and seeing if it works for you. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. Let it go. And don't let anybody pressure you one way or the other. Okay. Well, hold on. On that particular topic, public nudity is a crime in some areas, so one way or another might not have been the perfect phrasing for that. Do not let anybody pressure you into thinking that you must be naked to practice your spirituality or religion or magic in any kind of way. All right. Hopefully that answered your question. If I kind of missed the mark a little bit on anything, again, just reach out to me, let me know, and I'm happy to go back over and clarify anything. Um, let's see. Okay, so I still am not seeing any questions in the chat. So again, if you do have a question at any point, just pop that in there. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going through my list. We still have about roughly 15 minutes left, so I could probably get in at least a couple more questions. Um, let's see. Hmm. Oh, this question. I love this question. Okay. So this question is going to be a little tricky to answer, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Because depending on exactly where you're at in reading tarot, it may or I'm going to try to be like it give you the like beginner advice versus the more experienced advice. Okay, so the question was, how do I read tarot when I'm emotionally overwhelmed? Um, I was talking earlier in the session, going through emotional things, that overwhelm, how it can be draining. Some things are more draining than others, grieving processes, all those things. Um, so if you are doing the tarot readings, you're not going to a tarot reader. I'm assuming this question, the way it was written, is that you mean this as I'm sitting down and doing the reading myself for myself. So you're doing the reading for you, right? So if you mean this as how do I read tarot when I'm emotionally overwhelmed, like how do I read tarot for other people when I'm emotionally overwhelmed, I'm gonna say don't. I'm gonna point blank say do not. Um, I I remember one time being emotionally upset. I was going through a thing, and at the time, I had friends who still owned a little shop. This was back in Colorado, and so I kind of went to the shop to kind of wait for them. They were busy with some stuff, so I just kind of sat back, hung back. And this girl walks in, and she's like, "Oh, she sees me kind of shuffling through the card decks, and she's like, "Oh, will you do a reading for me?" She's like pulls cash out of her pocket, and she's just like, I'll totally pay you. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I am not in the right headspace right now. She's like, no, it's okay. You can. And I'm like, no, not today. Right. And this was years ago. So this was before I had, officially started doing readings, professionally. Like, so back then when I did do readings for people, it was not paid. It was mostly, oh, yes, that's I, sorry. My hair is driving me nuts, but I get messed up because I glance at the image on my screen and it is not mirrored. Sorry for my awkwardness. Anyway, so there even back then, like I was definitely uncomfortable with the idea of giving somebody a reading, whether it was paid or not paid, if I was emotionally overwhelmed. And today, now, as a professional tarot reader, as somebody who helps other people with kind of getting into the world of reading tarot for themselves, I do not like that idea of trying to force yourself to do it. Even if like my livelihood right now depends on me, if I book in a day at a shop or a pop up or an event, even if I've already invested money in the vendor fees or tabling fees, um, and I've already put the word out everywhere. If I am like so emotionally overwhelmed that like I take a couple steps and like I'm breaking down to tears and I'm on the floor, like I full stop, I have to just stop. Like that's gonna be a loss and I have to take that loss. Which really hurts when that's your sole income. Um, but that's not you cannot read tarot for other people if you are in that headspace like that. Um, and a lot of that has to go to just the nature of being in that headspace. Um, it's that's not to say that if you're going through things like, I in more recent weeks learned of the loss of former students of mine. And one of them I knew and knew his brother, and it killed me, hearing that news, and the fact that so much time had gone by between when it had happened and when I heard the news. Um, I was a train wreck. That day of, oh, I was a train wreck. Thankfully, I did not have anything official on my calendar that particular day. Um, but if I did have somebody ask me to, or I had that set up and coordinated, I would have canceled. I would have had to have canceled. I could not have done a reading for people. Um, but days later, I was by that point, I'm in a place where like, yes, am I still in my grieving process? Yes. Am I still raw from it? Kind of, yeah. But am I also still able to get into that headspace of being 100% a I don't necessarily want to use the word channel, but that might be the word you use. But kind of be there, be that service that point of service for somebody, then yes. But if you're emotionally overwhelmed for whatever reason, whether it's something as deep as and painful as grief, or if it's something more along the lines of maybe having like on the verge of anxiety attacks or panic attacks. If it's just like um, I got all the feels right now, and they're not good. um, whatever phrasing that you resonates the most for you when you're in that emotional overwhelm, it's still that same thing. Like you are not in a position to be of service to somebody else in that kind of way. Now, reading for yourself in those moments, this is where my answer to this question changes. Um, because when you are emotionally overwhelmed, reading tarot for yourself can actually be a positive experience. This can be that thing that gets you um, over that hurdle, if you will. Um, so if you're like you're emotionally overwhelmed, the tears are now flowing, you've got the tissues going or your sleeve. I've been there, I ugly cry, I get it. And it can be hard. Or you've got the heart palpitations, you get the racing heart, all the things, you're overwhelmed. Sometimes just that act of sitting down, shuffling that card, it's almost like that whole idea of like think about if you call for like mental health crisis or suicide hotlines or anything like that, one of the first things they will do is they will walk you through exercises to help ground you, right? Get you into your space for periods of emotional overwhelm. That is what step one is, ground. So some of that is that, like, okay, name five things you can see, Um, that is what the act of sitting down to start shuffling those cards does, is it immediately starts to ground you. Okay. And then when you shuffle, you pick a card, even if you're just like, I just need one card in this moment. So like you're so emotionally overwhelmed, the cognitive faculties aren't there. That's not really the time to like kind of go all out for like the big complicated spreads. Just one card it, right? And just be like, what do I need to know right now? What is that thing, a message for me right now? And no matter what card comes, like the goal of that card coming is going to be, okay, what is the bright side of this? What is the reality of this? What is this thing? So if that one card you pull happens to be the tower, don't go like, oh my God, it's even worse than I thought. Like you're already emotionally overwhelmed. That is the tower energy. The foundation already is shaken. Okay. So all that card would be saying is like, hey, this is a right now moment. The card, when it comes, it doesn't stay forever. The tower crumbles, and then the tower is crumbled. Like it can't just keep crumbling for all eternity. It's not going to stay in that state. It's not a perpetual state. It is a in this moment. So if you're emotionally overwhelmed, then you do get the negative cards. Don't read them as negative. They are just simply stating like, hey, this is what it is. It's temporary. Okay. Same thing like if you pull the death card, it's like this is a change, right? This is a transformation. This is that icky, painful part of the process. But there's something more to come, so it's okay. So even if you get a negative card when you do these things, use it as that kind of like somebody saying something soothing to you. Do they always say with their words all the things you want to hear? No. But they will say bring you something. So when you are emotionally overwhelmed, my advice is take as much time as you need to just sit and shuffle and let that, like, even if you're still tears streaming by the time you get to the point of doing a card, just that act of sitting there and shuffling, whether you're aware of it or not, your breathing will slow down, your heart rate will slow down. Okay, so even though you're still emotionally overwhelmed, you're still teary-eyed, you're still sniffling. Maybe if you're not an ugly crier, maybe you don't have all that, but I'm an ugly crier when I get too emotionally overwhelmed. Some people have seen it. It's messy. But if you're not that way, that's okay. Not everybody ugly cries. Um, but the point is, use that time to really sit there. So if you're shuffling for like 30 minutes, like, cool. Do what you need to do, however long it needs to take for you. If your brain keeps going back to whatever the thing is that you're overwhelmed about and you forget that you're even shuffling, just keep shuffling. Okay. And then again, when you do the pull card, just pull one. You don't have to pull a bunch. Um, if when you start to get a little bit more advanced in your reading skills as a reader, like you may find, you know what, I can do a 3 card pull without thinking about it. It doesn't have to be in this fancy spread. Like I get how I'm doing this. I get what I mean by this. That can be fine. But if you're still like I'd say like in that first decade of reading tarot for yourself and for others, I'd say like just stick with 1 card in those moments and just kind of let it be that message of like, what is the big thing for you in this moment? And again, even those negative cards can be empowering. Like if I sit there and I'm just had like all the feels, I'm in ugly cry mode, like I cannot think like a rational human being, like I can't even access that part of my brain, and I sit there and I pull a tower card, like that's relief. Because it's like, okay, I feel validated that I should be feeling this kind of way, while simultaneously knowing like it won't last forever and this emotional overwhelm will pass. Um, so that's how if you're going to use tarot when you're emotionally overwhelmed, that is how I would go about it. Um, but again, I'm gonna I'm gonna repeat where I started with answering this question. If you are referring to reading tarot for other people because you feel like you are obligated to do so for whatever reason, don't. Cancel, postpone, offer reimbursements, offer free discount on a future reading. So if you're a professional reader and you charge people for readings, offer them, like, you know what, I'm so sorry about this. Let's reschedule this session and then I'll schedule another session for you for, like half off or something, whatever however you handle um, your way of charging clients if you do read professionally. If you don't read professionally, then you can just reschedule with the person. It's fine. Um, but don't try to read for others when you're in that state. It's not good for you and it's not good for them. Um, I would also say it's probably not good for tarot's reputation either, but that's that's a whole other conversation. Um, but yeah, so again, tarot is a tool. It's meant to help us and support us. So to use it in any other way is not in those moments is not going to help you. It's not going to help you or anyone. Okay. So again, if I did not quite answer that question exactly as you intended it, please just reach out to me, let me know, and I'm happy to get that settled for you. All right, so we are coming up on the end. So I'm definitely not going to try to dive into answering another question of my list because I know questions I have here will take me a little longer than I could pull off in like 3 or 4 minutes. Um, if you are in the chat and you do have a question, you want to pop it in the chat. If it's something I can answer super quick, I will. If it's something that's going to take me a little longer, I'll just add it to my list here so that I can address it um, on our next Q&A. Um, and to give you some time to type that in if you need to, I'm going to go ahead and kind of give you some background information. So, of course, as always, I do want to say, like, if you're not already subscribed to my newsletter, The Starlight Circle, um, yeah, there will be links in the show notes. And kind of once you click the link, it'll kind of there's all the information you need to know about it. It's only monthly because I hate reading emails. So when I get emails from places more frequently than monthly, and there's a lot of times I will unsubscribe for no other reason than like you send me I recognize your email address way too much. Like this is too much. Not always, but many times I can't keep up with that many emails. Alternatively, specifically to tarot, if you did not already know, I have my learning website where I have online courses on demand. They're mostly on demand style self-paced courses. I put on my educator hat. So these are like actually designed as courses. They're not the ones I currently have are not like a full blown, like I don't have, the quizzes and you must be tested on this. Like they're not that serious in terms of academic rigor. But they are structured learning experiences. Um, and so they do involve some video, they do involve some text, they involve handouts, all that kind of stuff. Links to more resources, not just my own, but like especially I'm committed to if I make anything that could vaguely be construed as a scientific claim, I'm going to send you to some scientific resources to be like, I'm not making this up. This is a legitimate thing. And when I say scientific resources, I mean actual like no scientist in this world would deny that that is a scientific resource. I don't like people who say like, oh, science says, and then like, you're like, well, can you send me the research study that said this? And they like look at you like deer caught in the headlight because they don't know what you're talking about. It's like, that's not, if you don't have a scientific study, you can't tell me what science says because you have to give me a name, you have to give me a resource, so I know what you're talking about. Anyway, sorry, I could digress. Let's switch back to what I was talking about. That was one of my squirrel moments. I apologize. So among those courses, most of my courses there, of course, are paid resources. Even the digital downloads are typically paid for, paid resources. So if you do not want to buy things, I do have a Tarot 101 course that is 100% free. It does automatically sign you up to my newsletter, and it will not hurt my feelings if you then unsubscribe, because I mentioned I also do that to people. So no shame if you do. There is also yeah, so please do sign up for that if you have even the remotest of interest in Tarot 101. Even if you're the skeptical type, I made this course specifically to cater to, not just the seekers of tarot, but those people who maybe don't quite believe it, or they're trying to understand, like, why the heck do people pay for this? It's all made up. You need to take my Tarot 101. It was designed with all of you in mind. It was designed with everybody in mind. So that one goes a little bit more broad than some of my other courses. Um, anyway, that again is completely free. Link will be in the show notes. For my upcoming live streams, my again, Mondays 1 p.m. Eastern is my Q&A sessions, are a little bit shorter than this. I go a little quicker. Then, of course, my Saturday clearing conversations. These start at 5 p.m. Eastern every Saturday. Best way to submit questions is, if you want to submit them ahead of time, you can send me an email. You can reach out to me on social. I'm typically most active on Blue Sky. You can find me, of course, on Twitch and YouTube. If you're here, you're on one of those, so you you already know that I'm there. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Alignable, and a few other places. So if you see Evylyn Rose spelled the way my channel right now, the Evylyn, um, any of those, there's a 90% chance that's me. Um, very few Evelyn, very few Evelyn spell it the way I spell Evelyn. All the links to my websites and stuff will be in the show notes, so I'm not going to go over those in detail. Again, how to submit questions. If you rather come join me in the live streams, just pop the questions in the chat, or you can submit them ahead of time, and I'll add them to this list that I read off of. And it is Saturday. Let me see. Oh, nope. I don't think she's streaming just yet, but my wonderful, talented, multi-talented friend, Matanda, is streams on Saturday. She usually starts around 7:30, so I think you still have, if you haven't had your dinner yet, it's a good time. Go grab a meal and then come back and watch her stream. I do have her stream in links in my my Twitch profile. So if you are on Twitch, you can check that out as soon as I wrap this up. Check out her channel as well. She does do live streams. I want to say Saturdays are her live readings. So if you did come here hoping to see some live tarot readings, check out Matanda. So she's Tandersaya on Twitch. Check her out. She does do live readings on the air, and she'll tell you all about how to get a reading done with her. That is going to wrap us up. Okay, so that's our time for today. So thank you again for spending your Saturday early evening with me. It does mean a lot to me that you spent this hour here. If you have any questions that I didn't get to, again, make sure to send them to me ahead of time. Links to everything are in the show notes. The next live is going to be Monday for our lunar lunch break at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, stay curious, subscribe to my newsletter or my Starlight Circle, the newsletter, and keep